January 23rd meeting of Amherst City Council will come to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Wasilk. Here. Mr. Winarski.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Janik.
Here.
Mr. Bukabak.
Here.
Mr. Goodell.
Here.
Mr. Van Turen.
We'll stand by the prayer by Chaplain Silk and remain standing to the pledge of flag by Sergeant Bukabak.
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, bless this meeting tonight. Guide our minds and our hearts. We pray, too, a special blessing upon our new president. Grant him wisdom and understanding. Bless us all now, and now may the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to item 4, the consent agenda.
Minutes of the regular council meeting held January 9, 2017. Minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held January 17, 2017. Minutes of the Ordinance Committee meeting held January 17, 2017. Minutes of the Streets Committee meeting held January 17, 2017. Minutes of the Building and Lands Committee meeting held January 23, 2017.
Mr. Van Turen.
Move to accept the consent agenda as read.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to accept the consent agenda as read. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yeah.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Janik.
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak.
Yes.
Mr. Goodell.
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen.
Motion carries. On item 5, acknowledgement of the public pertaining to items on tonight's agenda. Anyone here wishing to speak on anything that is on tonight's agenda? Not, move on to item 6, ordinances and resolutions. First reading, item A.
An ordinance to approve current replacement pages to the Amherst codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Goodell.
Make motion to suspend council rules so item 6A may be passed on its first reading.
Mr. Miller.
Second with comment.
Motion. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Just briefly, I apologize for my absence during this committee meeting, but I did listen to it, and there were a couple questions and a couple things that were said. I want to make sure we clarify this. Some of these ordinances that you had in front of you that you moved out of committee were ones that we passed here on City Council, and then there were quite a few of them that were listed that were ORC, Ohio Revised Code changes that we had to make changes for our Amherst codified ordinances to match. And also there was a question on fireworks that I heard from Mr. Van Turen. I'm not sure what you found out, but I did go and do some research on the firework issue. A site that I don't think is worthy of citing, but says 29 states, including Ohio, has banned them. However, I went, yes, the Chinese lanterns. However, I did go dig up the ORC code, and the interesting part about that was they really don't ban any use. They banned a lot of production, manufacturing, sales, licensing, inspections, and that kind of thing. So I couldn't find the actual use of them, but in Amherst codified ordinance, I did find in Amherst codified ordinance 1519.04 for the possession of fireworks. 1519.04B talks about no person shall discharge, ignite, or explode fireworks, and then C states that nothing with a mix containing potassium, chlorate, sulfur, and sulfur together. And the only thing that these Chinese lanterns had stated was that there was a fire ring, an igniter ring, and then there was a fuel cell. I could not find what was in that fuel cell. If they're lighting anything and sending it off in the wind on a dry days, that makes you nervous anyway. I don't know how to handle that, if there's something that you want to add to that. But that's all I could find out about the fireworks, and to answer your question on.
Great job, I appreciate it. Moving on, talking about it after.
So, just to clarify a couple of the questions that were asked that I had listened to, and that goes to say thank you to our clerk of council, Ms. Turley, for quickly putting up those videos It allowed me, having to miss the Tuesday, the meeting that was moved to Tuesday, having missed that, I was able to watch that. So I really appreciate you getting them up there, getting them on YouTube, so that others, even those that are out in our city, want to check out what's going on. You could pull up the YouTube.
Mayor Costello was kind enough to get us faster internet, so.
And I do appreciate that. We had some
Taking
talks about that,
advantage.
and I've thanked him up and down for that as well. So I appreciate that, and that has allowed me to better serve my constituents as well. So thank you. With that, I have no further comments or questions.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to take item A on, pass on with the emergency
Suspension of rules is
suspension of rules, yeah.
what we have. We need to vote.
So, roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Janik?
Move to adopt.
Mr. Winarski?
I'll second.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Motion carries.
Ordinance O-17-01.
Item B,
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the 2017 Street Rehabilitation Program and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Bromhall Engineering and Surveying Company relating to such program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Miller.
Move to suspend council rules so that 6B may be taken to, oh, I'm sorry, that 6B may be passed on its first reading. My apologies.
Mr. Goodell.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules on item B so may be passed on the first reading. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Janik?
Move to adopt.
Mr. Miller?
Second, please.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Ordinance O-17-02.
Item C,
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the O'Leary Avenue Repairs and Improvements Project and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Bromhall Engineering and Surveying Company relating to such improvements, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Goodell.
Make a motion to suspend council rules so item 6C may be passed on its first reading.
Mr. Janik.
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to suspend council rules. So item C may be passed on the first reading. Any comments? Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, the audio is still not the best on that video, so I was watching this committee meeting. I wanted to clarify some of the work that was being done and just make sure I understood it correctly. So O'Leary Avenue is going to have concrete joints and work done underneath, and then we're going to asphalt across as an overlay, correct?
Basically, we'll probably grind it first, and then do the testing for the base, and then fix what base we need to with joint repairs and such, then overlay it with asphalt.
Fantastic. And then that's going to start at
Right
Main?
here on North Main and all the
Okay.
way to Mill Ridge, all the way to city limits.
Okay, to all the way. That was where I was going to get.
Yep.
Past the fork in the road, as we
Right
used
to the
call it
city
as a
limit
kid.
sign.
Right up to the city limits, a few houses down. And then I do appreciate this work being done on the street. This is a very high traffic area street. It's in dire need, and the last time I think that street was put in there when I was, 9 maybe, so almost 40 years ago. So it's much appreciated, and the residents
Good,
on that
thank
street
you.
are pretty happy to get their street up to code. So, thank you. No further questions or comments. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anyone else? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Miller?
Move to adopt, please.
Mr. Janik?
Second.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's ordinance 17-03.
Item D,
An ordinance authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for the widening of Kresge Drive along the frontage of Century Plaza and authorizing and directing the Safety Service Director to award the contract for such work to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract for professional services with Bromhill Engineering and Surveying Company relating to such improvements and declaring emergency.
Mr. Goodell.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend council rules so item 6D may be passed on its first reading.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Second with a question.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. So, once again, the audio is beautiful. I like it. It's not always there. So, my understanding from what I heard was that Willow Creek Bridge, not Beaver Creek Bridge, but the Willow Creek Bridge is where we'll still remain 2-lane? Or are we going to widen that bridge? I didn't get it.
The bridge itself is kind of cost prohibitive to widen. It's a very large project to do that. So that will stay same, and the engineering will take place from that and widen from that point west to 58.
Okay. West of 58. So what it remains between the bridge and Liberty Bell?
Will stay the same at
Will
this
stay
time.
the same. Okay. And that's going to go right to where the Century Plaza, pretty much the 3 starts there, the 3 lanes.
Right.
Okay, great. No further questions. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Van Kuren.
Move to adopt.
Mr. Goodell.
Second?
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Vasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukabak?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's ordinance O-17-04.
Item E,
An ordinance approving and conditionally accepting dedicated improvements for the Preserve at Quarry Lakes Phase 1 based on completing the punch list and approving the subdivision plat therefore.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to suspend rules for 6E without an emergency on it. And if I get a second, I'll explain the reasoning behind it.
Mr. Van Kuren.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ventura, for the second. Right now, the way it's set up, if we suspend council rules and give Mr. Brady and the Preserve an opportunity to start applying with the county, which is taking some extra time as well because there's a backlog, they'll still have 30 days if we suspend council rules and pass today. We'll still have 30 days if we catch something, if there's an issue, to stop this from going into act. And if we don't, and we just pass it on to the second reading, we'll not be in next Monday for general. We won't get to a general meeting until February 13th. And then 30 days after that, that's 7 weeks. And I have been one that has, and I appreciate Mr. Brady, I've been one that has grilled you over all this. And you have admirably given us straightforward answers. You have followed up. You've done everything that we've asked you. And for me, I don't believe it's a good idea to hold up somebody that's been working with the city in such good faith, this situation. I would like to get you this opportunity to move forward and get a 3-week jump. And I think that we still can protect ourselves. I think the mayor did a fantastic job of getting us, asking and you giving a good faith bond. The mayor went over the punch list. It seems very minor. These are things that won't show up as some of the council has questioned. So we've just moved 3 through suspension of rules. I'd like to see this last one suspended and give you that extra grace period to get things moving with the county. Thank you for the time.
First of all, Mr. Miller, you have to make a motion to add the suspension of rules to the item E. And we have to vote on that, and then we vote on the ordinance.
Okay. Do we have, I don't think we have to add suspension of rules. We have to add declare an emergency, and we're not.
You could move to pass, since we're in regular council meeting, you could move to pass this and suspend council rules and not declare an emergency. This is the time to do it.
And then you don't adopt.
Versus at a committee level, so I think we're okay.
Right
Okay.
now, Mr. Miller, you moved to suspend council rules, correct, already?
Correct,
And then
to
Mr. Van Turen
pass this
Right.
on the first reading as written. So I don't think we have to move to amend or modify this. I'm just asking for us to suspend council rules of going through 3 readings so that it may be passed on the first reading.
So we good to vote?
And I believe we had a second.
Mr. Van Turen?
Mr. Van Turen?
Is what Mr. Miller stated correct, and we still would have 30 days in order to revisit this, and if we needed to,
Yeah.
that is correct.
You're suspending rules, which means the 3 readings. He's not asking to suspend and pass on an emergency, which would get rid of the right for people to object and follow initiatives and all the referendums, the whole process that people have to object to legislation. So he's simply asking to suspend the 3 readings rule.
I don't always agree with Mr. Miller, I agree with him on this. I think that we need to give Mr. Brady all the leeway he can get in order to get this project done as quickly as possible, and I'm going to be voting for it.
Well, you can either do it this way or pass it on emergency on the second reading, and it'll actually probably benefit him more.
Will that go faster?
It'll go faster.
Yeah, but is it really an emergency?
Well,
Mr. President? Oh, go ahead.
Well, of course, council already knows this, you'd have to explain what the emergency is, and emergencies are typically defined as whatever council can articulate as an emergency, so.
It would save 1 week if we did it that way, but I like the idea of residents still being able to, within that 30-day window, come in and say, hey, wait a minute. If we pass this with emergency on the second reading, then there isn't an ability for citizens to come in and say no, because it will go into effect as soon as it's signed, which would be probably right after the meeting, correct?
It's signed, it goes into effect immediately.
Tomorrow.
Immediately. So that's why I didn't want to, I don't like to do things on emergency. I just don't like taking that out of the hands of the people. But if you want an extra week and you're willing to do that, I don't think it's,
I just brought that up, Mr. Miller.
I know.
I think
So-
it should go 2 readings, period. But that's up to you guys. So, Ms. Vasil?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. President. I think it should go 2 readings.
So anyway, there's a motion and a second on the floor to pass or suspend council rules on item E, so it may be passed on the first reading. Anyone else? Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Wasil?
No.
Mr. Winarski?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Kukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Turen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
No,
What,
I don't think so. Hold on.
5-2,
5-2.
Suspension
I
of
was,
rules.
okay, I was thinking well, that's fine.
not emergency or suspension of rules.
6 to 1
We do
votes
need
are
5-2
needed
for
for suspension.
Yeah.
5-2 for suspension rules.
6 to 1?
No.
5 to 2.
Just give me 1 second.
See, it hasn't been in a while, has it?
You need 3/4.
You guys make this hard.
So it's 3/4 of 7.
That's what I have.
He said as written, read the thing. It's not, it doesn't reflect what's in the minute. As written.
Just let
It's 3/4.
That's, our rules require 6
Okay,
votes for suspension rules.
For suspension, 6 out of 7.
Our rules require that. Our standing rules of council.
motion fails then.
Okay.
Does someone want to make another motion?
I have a
Mr.
question for that, just a point of order, the law director. What does it actually state?
You want me to
I'm
read?
just curious, the actual language.
Okay, sub-item 55,
States
suspension
2/3.
rules. These rules, or any of them, may be temporarily suspended at any meeting of council by an affirmative vote of all members of council present, with a minimum of 6 members present required for passage, except when a greater number is required by law or these rules. The rules, such suspension may be taken in yeas or nays and entered into the journal.
Thank you.
Doesn't our council rule say 3/4?
That is the standing rules of council,
Yeah,
our standing rules.
yeah.
Then there's the emergency rules, which are suspension, I'm sorry. When you pass things on an emergency, it's a lesser standard, so.
Okay. So, Mr. Menard,
I'd like to take this for the first reading, please.
Mr. Ventura,
Second reading? The second reading.
second reading.
you're right. Sorry.
Second.
Second reading. Just like to rephrase that, please.
There's a motion on the floor to take item E on to the second reading.
So that was Mr. Winarski and then Mr. Van Kuren.
Yes.
Mrs. Pasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik? Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. I know. I've been through that before. Completes items, or second reading. We have ordinance and resolutions on the second reading. We have none. Ordinances and resolutions on the third reading. Item A.
A resolution of necessity for the construction and repair of sidewalks for the year 2017.
Mr. Goodell.
Motion to adopt.
Mr. Winarski.
I'll second.
Motion is second on the floor to adopt. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Pasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Motion carries.
It's resolution 01702. I'm sorry, R. What did I say? Oh, sorry.
Go on to item 9, miscellaneous acknowledgement of the public. Anyone want to speak on any item tonight? Mr. Winarski.
If I could, please, with regards to R-1702, first of all, I want to thank council for passing this. This is just the first step. What I imagine we're going to learn a lot during the process of fixing sidewalks in our city. In addition to that, I enter this knowing that I have put a burden on some of our different departments. I'll identify the auditor's office, the council clerk, the law director, and the safety service director. We've just added to their workload, and I just want to say that if there's anything I can do to help you with this workload, I'd appreciate it. I got some additional comments, but I'd like to turn it over, or I'd like to ask the mayor just for some observations and thoughts, please.
We started the process last year when we had this resolution. We did pinpoint a lot of the sidewalks in need of repair. So I really truly think the safety service director is going to be fine with, for lack of better words, addressing these sidewalks that need fixing. But the biggest obstacle, and I think it's going to take some help from, I don't know if it's the treasurer, the auditor, and city council is financing this. There really truly is nowhere in the budget that we're going to have for the amount of money that I think this is going to take. So I think we're going to need some ideas on how to borrow, or bond, or I hope council and the auditor's office somehow work together to figure out how to help finance this, because the money's not here.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, once again, I identified the different people that are going to be taking on additional work. I'd like to start with the law director. When time permits, I understand that, once again, we're learning here. If we'd had the opportunity to sit down or maybe on the phone call, identify maybe a punch list or a list of milestones that we need to hit, maybe associate the order that they go in and who is responsible for attending to those items, just so we make sure.
Sure.
And we can discuss that sometime in the future, but I just wanted to address that with you.
Of course.
To the auditor, I wanted to, well, first of all, thank you in advance for any help you can offer, but we're gonna need to fund this thing. I don't know how you go about funding stuff like this, so I'm gonna ask for your help. If there's additional work required, I'm once again willing to volunteer in any capacity, but, do we need to bring people in doing temporaries or whatever? We could start that thought process, what we need to do and how much, and thank you.
Yeah, we spoke briefly before the meeting, and last year, when this was brought forward, we did talk about, some type of financing, and I did reach out to our bond counsel, RBC, Katie Kleinfelter, about bonding. The amount of money that you're looking at, you're under $500,000, it's really cost prohibitive on the city's part to try to go off of bonding. There is an alternative. I unfortunately don't have the email with me. It's in my folder on my desktop at the office. I will pull that off. I'll try to email it to you as well. There is an alternative funding that we can go out for that is less arduous than doing bonding, and it's a very successful plan, and it's pretty easily done. She explained it in this email. It's pretty lengthy, so I can understand it, so I can hopefully walk you through it, but it would probably be the answer that we're looking for is to do that.
Well, then I'll need you to interpret for me, because I'm sure it has acronyms and all kinds of
Well, I'm
crazy
sure I'll
words.
bring her in and have her do that.
Thank you very much. To the Safety Service Director, we're going to be entering this, and it's amazing. You're going to have to gather and give us a list of addresses that are in need of repair. You think this would be a simple task, but it simply is not. To identify what a sidewalk is, what is the criteria? You have to have some specific guidelines, and I give you credit for all the work you put into this already, and I look forward to seeing your list. In addition to that, the things you don't think about, like making sure that we don't do work on a neighbor's yard and assess the wrong person, it's a lot of work, and I thank you in advance for your work in this. And then finally, to the Clerk of Council. To the Clerk of Council, there's letters you gotta send out and all that stuff. I will happily sit in here on a Saturday, stuff envelopes, mail them out.
Who's going to take the phone calls?
And that was my next point. I will happily, if you collect their phone numbers, I will happily come up here on a Saturday and return every one of those phone calls. Any Saturday. I just want to see this thing through. And I don't want to create extra work for people, but there's a process we have to follow. And I honestly, in front of everyone here, offer my services to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now we'll move on to item 10, agenda requests and committee meeting schedules.
I have two, Mr. President. The first is A-1707 for Building and Lands. It's an ordinance to approve the subdividers agreement between the City of Amherst and Canberra Development 2 LLC for the Preserve at Quarry Lake Subdivision 2. And the second is A-17-08 for Finance, authorization to bid and award the 2017 tree trimming maintenance. And that is complete.
Thank you. Finance, Ms. Rousseau?
Yes, I have one item, A-1708, authorization to bid and award the 2017 tree trimming maintenance contract. I'd like to call that for 7 p.m. on the 6th of February.
Thank you, Ms. Rousseau. Building and Lands, Mr. Janney?
Yes, Mr. President, I have one item, A-17-07, an ordinance to approve the subdividers agreement between the City of Amherst and Canberra Development 2 LLC for the Preserve at Quarry Lake Subdivision 2, and I'd like to call that for 7:10 on February 6th.
Probably 7:05.
7:05?
Yes. Thank you. Streets, Mr. Bukovac?
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Community Development, Mr. Goodell?
Nothing at this time, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Executive, Mr. Van Kuren?
No items this time, please cancel.
Thank you. Ordinance, Mr. Miller?
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Utilities, Mr. Janik?
No items, Mr. President, please cancel.
Thank you. Recycle, Mr. Miller?
Keep recycling, but no items. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Technology, Mr. Bukovac?
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. Police and Fire, Mr. Benarski?
Nothing this time, Mr. President.
Thank you. Annexation, Mr. Miller?
No items, please cancel.
Thank you. That completes item 10. Move on to item 11, reports of administration.
Thank you. Mr. Kukuka?
No report this evening. Thank you.
Mr. Ramsey?
No report either.
Mr. Pecora?
But just
only for clarification, because I want to make sure we all are on the same page. The Ohio Revised Code 731.17 indicates that 75% of the members of council need to vote for suspending council rules. So that's 5.25, so you have to, by law, you round up, so it is 6. Just note that it's on both the Ohio Revised Code and our local rules. So 6 votes is needed.
Thank you.
Else.
Mr. Jeffries?
No report, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
And I have no further report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Basile?
Move to accept the report of the administration.
Thank you. Mr. Bukovac?
Second, please.
Roll call vote.
Mrs. Wasilk?
Yes.
Mr. Winarski?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Janik?
Yes.
Mr. Bukovac?
Yes.
Mr. Goodell?
Yes.
Mr. Van Kuren?
Yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Janik?
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Miller?
Second.
Motion second on the floor to adjourn, and all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned at 7:42.
Math people are going to call my office.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go from having a really, really good
Okay.